Hey people, after getting my tequila fix on last night, I walked out and looked at the moon, that little bitty sliver of moon, and it was telling me it's time. So I unloaded some information in a video, and I talked about something else that you're not supposed to talk about, or YouTube gonna put a stupid sticker on your video. And I said some stuff about the Judgment Day, and there's more to it than that. But you can see it in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The judgment all happens inside of you. If you read on that, you'll see that they write all these things. I have not raped and I have not robbed and all these things. And it doesn't matter even if they did it. You tell yourself you didn't. There's magic in the word. There's power in the word. And all the judgment happens inside of you. Ain't no outside forces judging you. You're your judge. You're your own judge. Satan lives inside of you. And that's why the Catholic Church has this thing set up, this confessional. And my mama used to make me go into that confession box. I thought that was so damn ridiculous. I'd make shit up just to tell him. I'm 8 years old. I don't remember what I did last week. But yeah, that's the idea. They want you to say the things that you did so you feel remorse, so you can feel the guilt of it. But the Egyptians, they knew better. You deny everything. You keep on denying it, the word makes the truth. And that's how they pass through judgment, by holding up and refusing. I didn't do that. I ain't never did no wrong. I ain't never stole nothing. I ain't never committed no adultery. And that's the way the Egyptians looked at it. That's the judgment. It happens inside of you. Satan lives inside here. Satan is the judge. And this is the light that all those know. And people wonder why, these people that claim to be Christian, how they could do these evil things. Is because they know this. So I can back up most everything I say. And this is going to be a movie of proofs right here. It's going to go in that folder called the Payador, with that movie I did last night and the one before, where I was explaining myself. But this is in the book of Isaiah. They got a really poor interpretation of most every word in here. And I'm going to show you how they come up with these interpretations. But, you got two types of historians. You got boneheads, and you got these boneheads that do whatever the Vatican tells them. Say what the Vatican tells them to say. And I got proof of that, too. I'm fixing to show you right here. But they say that this book of Isaiah, this was the origin of Christianity. In Christian circles, it was held in such high regard as to be called the fifth gospel. And Isaiah, just like Jesus, speaks out against corrupt leaders and for the disadvantage and roots righteousness in God's holiness rather than in Israel's covenant. And so this is why they misinterpret every word. But everybody knew that Isaiah was the book of the Masons. It was originally written without all the vowel points and the stupid pronunciations. And it explains how they created this new one God system. So this is your proof right here that all your historians, they work for the Vatican cronies. They do what they're told. They say what they're told to say. And so this word, it's not. They're looking at it as the eccles. The eccles are the chosen ones. The call, the one that was called. And it doesn't say that at all. And you see this word, this ek. Actually, it doesn't even read as ek, but it reads as El. And it's El Samenos. And it's not that either, but that's the way people were looking at it that didn't understand the secrets. But you see this El Examenos right here. And it's the Christians claim it is their proof of Jesus. And they'll interpret this as ancient, it's scratched in the wall underneath. They say it was some old Roman barracks. And they'll tell you that somebody was making fun of Alexamenos. Praise to his God is the way they'll interpret this. This is scratched in there. And as plain as day, that's not what it says. But this is where this word comes from. This is Zamenos. It's coming from right here. This is Zamenos. And this is the Allah. You don't see it here. You have to go to the Septuagint. And then it explains these words much better. And you see the word spelled the same, Eklexamenos. Except it's got an apostrophe on top of that E over here. And so people in the know knew what apostrophe meant. And nobody today even knows what apostrophe means. And they say the word comes from the Greek apostrophe, which literally means the act of turning away. And that's not what it means, but that's close enough. It's away, the strophe. And strophe is not necessarily turn away, but it's sliding out of there sideways because people are throwing eggs at you. The apostrophe. A speaker comes up and he starts talking and people are throwing tomatoes at him. They're hating it. When he away, strophes. He strophes on out of there. He doesn't turn his back to you because he's trying to dodge the tomatoes. He's still watching, but he's walking sideways. That's what that means, But it's a way to turn, and that'll work. And so it means when you see this apostrophe at the beginning of the word, it lets you know, oh, I got to turn away. And so you don't read this word like that. You read this the other way. Oh, and it's the sun, the sunum, em, the sun, apostrophe em, them, the sun, them. And then the X is the TS. And so it's read at, A-T, at S-E-L. And you can almost see the select in there. But there's groups of letters in this Greek that change. Like this E-N, you'll see it across from a B in the Hebrew all the time. And it actually turns into the B. That when you see the N-E, see, it tells you to turn it backwards. And so this turns into a B-E or a V-E. And so you're reading this as a N-E-N or a B-E-N. And so it's not in, but it's been. Without the apostrophe, it means in. And with the apostrophe, it means been, as that period of time. And so the meanings change between these two Bibles. Once they remove these apostrophes, this just means in. And most time they'll say it means in. I'm pretty sure to say it means in. In, on, at, by, or with. But no, with is mit. This is in. And so the meaning changed a little bit, but it still has a story here that they don't want you to know, and they reinterpret all these words for you. So this has become known as the chosen, but it's not. The word is read, when you read with the apostrophes, it turns it into English. It turns ancient Greek into English the way it was originally. And it's the sun, them, at, and then this K-E becomes an L, two L's. The select, and then back to other words. And the sun, them, at, select. Let some in as. The sun, them, at, select lets them in as. And so it's more than having chosen. It's the light that you let in. And so this isn't somebody picking on Alexamenos because he was a Christian. This word underneath here is to C-E-B-E-T. It means sieve it. It means, to receive is something you get. But I tell you, re doesn't even belong there, because re means you had it and lost it and got it back. You sieve it. And so sieve it is where we would use our word receive. But in the Greek and in the Hebrew, it's just sieve. And you see it in the Hebrew, when it says, and he took or gave or got or something like that. It'll just be spelt with the SB, means to sieve, to receive it. And so this isn't necessarily Alexamenos, but it's all examine as sieve it. All examine as receive it. And this is theon, and it's one of the words I say is God. There's different words. There's those, and those are the gods of the elite, of the Illuminatis, those ones that you're not supposed to talk about, or they'll put a stupid sticker on your video. But this is the on, T-H-E-O-N. And on is on your light switch, and that's what it means. It means light. When you put it on the on side, the lights come on, and it means light. And that's why it's on your light switch. And I'll examine as sieve it the light. And so this isn't a person, it's all examine. And you see this this Y at the top. And it's where your ancient word Y comes from. They'll tell you there was no Y in the ancient Greek or the Roman. And here's proof of that. It's not right here. But it's a picture word, and it's a Y in the road. You're coming down the road, and you come up to a Y. You have a decision to make. You could go this way or this way. And so it's where your word why, W-H-Y, come from. And so before you make a decision, you have to ask yourself, now, why would I go this way? Why would I go that way? And you have to think about this before you make a decision. And that's what this why means, to make the decision. I'll examine as seeth the light. And all these fish head cronies, they know this shit. And they're glad you're a sheep. They want to keep you a sheep. And that's why none of the Bible, none of the Greek, none of the Hebrew has been properly interpreted. Zero. There's no words in here that's been properly interpreted. This is why the Greek, they use the H as the letter E. And so that's in case you have a word that has to be pronounced, with an N-E. You can't spell it with the N-E or people are going to think it's a B. And so you would spell it with the N-H instead of an N-E. And so this word, a measure, it's the meter. A meter is a measure of time in music, in the meter, in its time, And so that's why in the Septuagint, it has the apostrophe and it reads backwards, it's ben, B-E-N, as in a ben, as in a period of time, has been the meter in that measure of time. The meter is, in music, it's a rhythmic pattern, so it's not saying with a measure, it's saying in its pattern, in its rhythm. And so don't miss that last movie and this make more sense to you and make more sense of that last movie. But that's what this was talking about. The paragon iskos, which does not mean Carpenter's Square. It means passing shadows in its meter of time. When you figure out its rhythm, that's when you become rich back in the day. That's when you became the god of the sun, and you could turn the sun off and on as you liked, or as that time liked. So the sun, them at select, lets them in as, is a color. When you're choosing which sun to let in, you're choosing which lights to let in, which color. Which frequency of the wavelength. And so in this writing, you just take this EK, and it evolved from changing the writing. It evolved to the L. And so you just read this EK as L or of. And of lets them in as. The ones have chosen of those of the lets them in as. And the tell it on. Into the secrets of Zulon, the crossing, the cross. And I showed proofs of this in 2 movies ago in this series, that first one. And then this word sets. And you can see that's another word with the apostrophe in it. And so it starts with an N-E, so you replace that with the B, in, and then S-H-T, in set, S-H-T-S. The H is the E. And in sets, and then is THS, this in. In sets, this is in. And you can see the mark above here still. And it lets you know that to read this the old way. In sets is this in. ES is IS. Same as EN is IN. In sets, this is this in. And this is also, where your word EL, elects in as. Elects in as. Telt on. The telt on. The secret of to fashion, to put it on. The tell it on. Zulon. On the cross. In sets is this in. And the cross sets. And this is pronounced as what to, W-T, ought, what you ought to do, ought to, and ought to in its rhythm. And this key, you always just replace it with a vav, and then you give it any of the meanings of a vav. Could be a V, a U, a W, or it could mean connected, or and, or to. And E is the, same as in the Hebrew, and you see it in many of your Greek words too. You just read it as a the. And the morph is the morph as in, the change. The morph is in what to in para along with the graffiti. Alexamenos graffito, the graffiti, the graphing. And so graphing isn't just word, but it's words showing a position, to graph something. It's writing showing positions, para along with the graffiti. And so you don't use a scraper to make graffiti, you use a scraper to remove the graffiti. So this is all misinterpretations. And then the poison in. And so the poison, God created everything with the word. This is the word they'll use in Genesis 1 in the Greek. And so the poison is coming out of the snake's mouth. What the snake says is the poison word. And the poi, that's your base word for the poet. And it's, the poi is the one that has the word, the one in charge, what he says. And the poison, what to in para gone iskos. Passed by, para along with gone. He passed by you. He long gone the shadows. And so this key, is the W. When. Like I say, when you look in the other Bible, it has the apostrophe and it's a B-E-N. B is the ben, a period of time, B-E-E-N. And so, and ben can be read here as when, in meaning talking about a period of time. And this is another word in the other Bible. It'll have this other mark under the end here. And this is the same mark you'll see in the Greek word of apostrophe underneath here. And it almost means the same thing as apostrophe. But you read up to it, and when you hit it, you turn around. And the only difference with this and apostrophe is when you turn around, you come back and read, because sometimes it'll be in the middle of a word, and you come back and read that H at the final again, and it's the call, and then the halo, and then the KH, the catch, the call, halo, catch. And then here, read backwards, in sim. And sim is, where the word similar comes from, and in the Hebrew, it'd be the name. Everything was named what it's similar to. In sim and THU is where your word to comes from, and it means a passage to get to somewhere, the to. In the call, halo, catch, in sim to where the rhythm, R-Y-T-H-M, and the rhythm is in. And so here, they're just reading it, in the call and the H going with this ER. You see they added an extra R in it this way to make it fit like this, and it's the call here, the rhythm is in. What to and W-E, we, poi. The poise is come from the per orally. It's what your doctor writes on the script. If he wants you to take the pill by mouth instead of a suppository, he puts this on there to let the pharmacist know, hey, give them the oral type, per orally, the mouth. And we poison what to as morphon, HN, morph on, the change on. And rose, not andros, but and rose, and raise up was, W-O-S, was the aura, the color of the light, an array of, the O is the of that, on their on their opposing. And so this man is coming from anther. Anther is the male part of a flower. On their was the say of to in Okisco. And so that doesn't mean niche. It means where it lives. And you grab this word and search it, and you'll see, it'll come up with all this Greek writing. But if you just hit your translator, you'll see this, it's the place I live, the households. And so that's what it's talking about when it says niche, it's where I live. It's the idol that lives in the niche, in this little niche. A niche is the place where it lives. It just happens to be that where this lives is in a niche, but it's not a niche. It's where it lives. So it's that time of the year all the hot rods come down the coast for cruising the coast. And it'll be a month of loud-ass cars out here. So if you hear me getting irritated, it's that noise I have to cut out because I can't even hear myself up in here. But let me read all this and put it all together. Of lets them in as telt on Zulon. Of the mark, and then the KE is of, and the ton is the fashion to put it on. And lets them in on the tell it on, what it's telling you. The tell it on the crossing, to let them in the secret knowledge of the crossing. Is this in? They're getting the sets from when it read backwards, but here, this is a total different book, and it all changes. And it's mainly because they didn't want people to know how to read the other book, because it give out too much information. There's so much more in there. But, to let them in as tell it on crossing, is this in what to in time, in its meter, in its rhythm of time. To the morphs in, we, we morphs in, to the morphs in, what to in paragraffiti, along with the graphite, the graffiti of the poison, what to, the poison is the magic words, the potion, that's how everything was created, with the word. In the poison, what to, in the paragoniscos, in the passing shadow, when the call here rhythm is in. What to we poison, what to as morphin is the change in. And rose was array of that too on their apo. And rose was array at that too on their oppose. I was showing a picture of the Vatican, and the anther is the big dick that stands up in the middle, and the opposing is where the shadows pointing out on the opposing circle in the sundial, on their on the other side was the say. What the word says, the shadow is what's given the word, is what's saying. The shadow tells what to plant. Hey, the shadow's pointing over here, it's time to plant corn. The shadow pointing over here, it's time to harvest. And on their opposing was the say, what to in, has the say in its house. So let me explain one more thing here before I go. I finished a lot of my movies off with this now. I made this a long time ago when I saw how piss poor the selections for president they were giving us. Everybody's been taught to hate and fear the Antichrist by the same person that misinterpreted the entire Bible for you. And so people are hating on it because they don't understand what either one of these words mean. But anti, it's a coon-ass word. It means represent. When I was in the Navy, I belonged to this profit-sharing club. We called it poker. And the coon-ass is, before you got your card, you had to represent yourself. And the coon-ass would say, hey, ante up, ante up. But my buddy from Alabama, he didn't speak no coon-ass. He says, represent yourself, Put something in the pot to represent you, so if you want some cards. Represent. Ante is represent. That's all that means. And so everybody says, well, it's a terrible thing to misrepresent yourself as the Christ, which is spelt with an XR, same as your Christmas, the X, the Christmas is spelt with an X. It was originally spelt with the X. And people don't understand what the Christo means, because the same person that misinterpreted the rest of the book has interpreted this for you as the Christ. And people assume that Christ means the Son of God. Here you see Christ is the son of David. But, It simply means the anointed one. And, people don't even know what anoint means. Smear or rub with oil. And I got many old videos that explain more about how that was changed. But that smear or rub with oil actually is the same thing the witches are doing on their broom flight. But you see here, the ceremonial confer divine. And that confer is coming from your word conifer, a pine. The pine divine is the pine divine. It's your third eye. It's the divine pine cone. It sits out there in front of the Vatican. That's the God. It's inside it. Your whole universe, everything that you see and imagine, it all has to travel through your pineal gland before you picture it. It's all created right here. Your whole universe is created in this pine divine that sits up inside your head. So when I started doing this, I was interested in these ancient megalithic structures because I've been building and moving huge shit all my life, and we can't do this today. And I knew there was some forgotten knowledge, and I wanted to know more about this before I died. And that's the whole reason I started. And I just Googled the most ancient books, and I started reading all the most ancient books. And it was all somebody else's translations. And I knew this information was in those ancient books. And the most ancient book I could find and complete was the Bible. And I started to read that King James Version, or this New Standard Version, whatever they call it. And, it wasn't making a whole lot of sense. And when I got up to the story of Babylon, and when I seen that one language was such a problem for God, that really flipped everything around of what they've been trying to tell us about God, how he's all powerful. How come just one language of man give him such a problem? And that's when I knew I had to figure out the old language. I knew it was all a mistranslation. And there's hints all the way through there to let you know that this is a figment. It's a figature. It's not true. It's a representation of something else. So I come to start learning this Hebrew. I went to looking at this Hebrew, and I clicked on a movie of a guy who said he's going to teach Hebrew. And the first thing this sheep said was, all these letters, they all have a picture meaning. But he says, but none of that matters. It doesn't have anything to do with the language. And so I figured out real quick that he was a total idiot. And these pictures had everything to do with the language. And as I started studying the picture meanings, I seen how this English language was put together with this same picture meaning. So I went and found the oldest copy of the Bible I could find, and I seen it was a mountain to try to figure this out. And I thought I needed a little help, so I lubricated my pineal gland. I oiled it on up, and it got working real well. Oil your pineal gland, and you'll start seeing through a lot of this bullshit. I anointed my pineal gland. I self-anointed. And I can't see the problem with it because they say that Jesus did the same thing. He was anointed too. And so they turned into this fearsome creature because like hell do they want the people to be anointed. They don't want anything but sheep out there. They don't want anybody to be able to think for themselves. And the reason I do this is because I don't want any sheep out there. I can't stand sheep. I can't stand wool clothes. And I can't stand no ba, ba, ba. And the reason all the sheep say ba is because it's the only thing they know what to say. They only say what they heard. They only repeat what they heard somewhere else. They don't have enough intelligence to say anything else. And so everybody's welcome to comment on my videos. Whatever you have to say is all welcome. Just don't attack my viewers. And don't try to call my viewers your flock. Because there's no sheep that watch my videos. There's no sheep here. If you're looking for your flock, go to church Sunday.
I am the Antichrist, and I approve of this message.